So let's create a covenant for you dog fuckers and keep you there, please.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yep.
We've been doing this for a long time. And so let's move on to a different topic. This was not the plan. Here we are. This is not the plan. Once again,
you had told me we were talking about this, I would have fucking been like, I'm good for today.
Hi.
Good evening.
Yeah, thanks all for being here. We're just waiting on actually I don't know who we're waiting on. No, we're here. Who we're waiting on? Who's the last person? I don't know. We are waiting on J Chow, that's who we're waiting on.
Right here.
Oh no, you're here. Okay.
Looks like you're waiting on Kasimir.
Kasimir,
Yikes.
thank you.
My invisible energy.
Yo, what the fuck is he doing?
NPC vibes. I get it.
Yeah. Okay, alright, good to know.
Leave the Asian alone.
But thanks all for being around.
Yo, fucking Kasimir breaking
He's
the
invited.
winning streak. Breaking the winning streak of libertarians and right wingers being the ones that show up on fucking time. Like this is what I love to talk shit on all you lefties for. And then one of my fucking people shows
I'm virtually
up late.
always on time. Like I think I'm pretty reliable.
Wait, Lacto. What's this thing in chat about a bestiality debate? Like, what did you argue on about bestiality?
Yeah, on Friday it was a good debate.
He's your prodigy.
What was your position?
Well, I mean, if you have to come watch the video, you want to know.
No, just tell me. Like, what do you think about bestiality?
So this was about Naughty Princess, and I supported her.
That's the woman who fucks dogs, right? Is very proud of it. Calls herself a trans canine.
Yo, hold on. You got it back.
He said it was a sexuality.
You gotta introduce this topic. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Okay, so Prime, there was like this big hubbub on Twitter, right? About this woman who calls herself Naughty Princess. And it's like not as in like a knot nut, because you know sometimes when dogs have sex they'll like twist around and they get stuck inside and they're like not.
Yeah, they get a thing called a knot. It's like a boat knot.
Yeah.
For her pleasure.
I've done extensive research into this thing. So
why?
There's a woman called Naughty Princess, right? Who made like a big thing on Twitter because she was calling herself a trans canine and just proudly talking about how she likes to fuck dogs, right? And adding people to like this Telegram thing where she was like posting videos of herself like having sex with dogs. Prime, I was telling I forget who I was telling somebody that this woman is like the perfect like incel maker because she's actually pretty attractive.
She's pretty attractive.
That's what's so funny about it. So like you could tell any incel like this hot woman would rather fuck a dog than you. Like,
what they're hilarious. Say. They would rather fuck dogs.
Well, no. Have you guys not heard of the dog pill?
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Oh god,
that's what we're saying right now.
It's all over.
The dog pill is.
Yeah. So
Prime, I'm gonna send it to you. Okay.
Yeah. So I went head to head with some other Twitch personalities, and it was a bloodbath. I mean, we cemented. Everyone agreed at the end. Look, we have to allow fucking dogs. There's no other solution. So that's where we ended the debate.
I don't think that's where it ended.
Don't open her Twitter. Don't open her Twitter.
But it did end with somebody saying they tasted a dog's dick.
You're not gonna do that.
I put up a poll that said I won. Just want to make that clear.
I put up a poll that said I won.
Wait, who was the guy on the panel who said he has tasted the dog's dick?
That was Rhubarb. That was interesting.
He said he tasted the dog dick in like a non-sexual way. Somehow.
Which I don't know what that means. What is like? Was he testing it? Like what was it?
He said it was like taste and tactile reasons.
Taste and tactile reasons. What?
My first kind of like foray into like understanding how horrible all Twitch streamers are was recognizing that basically everybody was willing to talk to Mr. Girl except for me and Aristocracy. Everyone else did the rounds for the most part. I don't know if you ever talked to him. Right, but like, it was very obvious that this guy was a pedo apologizer and a sick piece of shit, and and you could just listen to the guy for 2 minutes and realize something's fucking off with this piece of shit. But I understand it now more, right? And I understand it by hearing all of these people excited to go on a panel about dog fucking. Like I recognize that some of you, Lactoid unfortunately being one of them, will do fucking anything for the clicks and views.
No, I've held this position for years. I have been defending bestiality in DGG going back for at least 4 years. You can find message logs of me doing it. I went on there for the principle.
Can we look this up right now? Can we find message logs of Lactoid defending bestiality years ago?
Yo, I went on there for the principle. I genuinely think that the fact that she lost her job was a tragedy and a reflection of the bad part of American politics. This was not for clicks.
Can we make that? Can we make this a topic on the panel?
I will straight up leave.
I'm down to debate it. Let's do this.
Talk about dog fucking.
Scott's
she lost her job in OnlyFans. That's where.
Yo, it is crazy because she is attractive.
Is that?
Wait, so if she were ugly, would it be like less surprising that she's fucking dog?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest.
Would it be more okay?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yep.
I don't think it would make sense.
Here's the thing, though. Like,
dies, of course
either way, it's weird, but like, it wouldn't be okay. But it's like weird.
Also, Prime knows that I will debate weird sexualities even before I made my fucking Twitch. So
I think the truth is, no guy wants to admit, but the reason they're defending her is because she's hot, and they feel like they could change her. They're like, I could get her away from those dogs.
Is true, Lactoid?
With their
do you want to save this woman?
Will be me.
Oh my God, Prime, you're right. Can they compete?
We have all these carnivores in chat.
Some guys can, but most guys can't.
Yeah, I'm okay with eating animals. I'm just, it's weird to fuck them.
But okay, all right, hold on. So
I know that's why
into it.
That's Lactoid's position because like he's consistent. I've had the vegan debate with Lactoid.
Thank you. I'm consistent. Yeah.
Lactoid. I'll say it. Okay. Here we are. Here we are, a classic Prime panel. I guess, Lecto, you and I have lined up when it comes to the social libertarian side. I think we and I have lined up a lot in the past. And I guess I would say that if this person wants to, if they're not being coerced, if it's a thing that they want to get up to, what difference does it make to me or to anyone else?
Thank you, Prime.
Right? Now, I am not saying that anyone should, no, but no encouragement.
The World Economic Journal's behind this.
We're pro human dick here.
How far of us has society fallen where people aren't comfortable just saying it's morally not okay to fuck dogs?
Fabian, did you ever think you would see the left and the right coming together on this?
Lactoid, do you think it's morally not okay to fuck dogs?
I think it's morally fine. We eat animals, we own them, we keep them as pets, we play fetch with them. I some peanut butter on a dick somewhere. It's not.
Yeah, but for some reason,
that's not going to take up my time. I'm not going to send police to their house, right? I'm more focused on other things.
But for some reason, right? Historically, humans have eaten animals, right? It's been pretty normal. There's been a food chain. We've been a part of that, but it's also historically humans have shunned fucking animals, right?
I don't know.
Obvious reasons.
Yeah. One of the big ones I was brought up when you guys were talking was zoonotic diseases. That's a really big reason because there's diseases that the way they make those jumps, the reason that humans get affected by these is because of the sexual intercourse with animals.
No, all the ones where they were saying
eating them is also a reason, but eating them.
They were eating them with bush meat.
Eating them is also a reason, but the way we eat them, wouldn't you be pro having these factories or having these big farms where we can regulate what foods we're eating, making sure that these diseases don't spread more accurately?
That happens now.
And the regulated brothels could also be
regulated dog brothels, though.
Lactoid is the fucking best.
Wait, so Scott, do you think it's immoral to be platforming this dog fucker Lactoid?
I think it's stupid.
He's been arguing in favor of bestiality for years. What is it about you that drives you to be this way, Lactoid? What do you think it is?
So I recognize when and this is going to sound like soy, but I genuinely believe it, right? So I have a philosophy of what the government should and shouldn't do. One of the things they shouldn't do is
has nothing to do with morality.
No, but it does because we currently live in a world.
No, it doesn't.
We live in a world. So you can say that. You can say that, and that's great. And that's a very, very comforting. That's very comforting for the people who are thrown in a cage for doing this, right? But we live in a world in which the cops will come and arrest
No. This is what happens. This is what happens when you don't fucking put in the work to actually read libertarian philosophy and you call yourself a fucking libertarian. Libertarianism is about what is against natural law. It is a descriptive legal system. It says nothing about morality, okay? What it says is what is ethically just, what we can prove to be ethically unjustified, okay? That means that dog fucking is something that can be observed and reported and analyzed for morality. Aggression, we cannot, you can't call it moral or immoral because it's not ethically justified. You simply can't argue in favor of aggression. However, we can talk about whether or not it's moral or immoral to fuck dogs. I don't know why you would want to do that, because it's so fucking obviously true that it's immoral to fuck dogs, you fucking weirdo.
It's
right?
obvious. It's not
But that's
an argument.
very different than whether or not we should give the state the power, right, to arrest people for dog fucking.
Sure. Why is it immoral? Just like give us a TLDR on that.
Well, can I just ask you like more directly? So Fabian, like, or Scott, can you just explain like, why is it less moral to put peanut butter on my dick and let my dog lick it off than it is to slaughter a cow for hamburger? Like, why is killing an animal more moral than having it lick peanut butter off my dick?
Well, it depends on how you kill the animal.
Wait, so what's
kosher and what isn't?
Yeah, like why? Like I'm literally murdering this thing without consent.
Right?
That is the ultimate aggression, right? You're murdering something. You're taking its life.
Animals are not
versus like letting it lick something off my dick.
If they're not
animals,
then you're justifying it. Then already.
Animals,
animals
are not moral agents, right? So what we do to an animal, right, is of no consequence. It's property. It's not a moral agent. Now, there may be some argument that in the future we'll discover that certain animals are moral actors, right? Like maybe elephants, right? Like maybe dolphins, maybe some breeds of dogs. But for the most part, like we can recognize that animals are not capable of making moral decisions, right? They can't think about moral propositional statements and say this is right or this is wrong. So they can't consent to anything, right? We have guardians. We are guardians over something that is our property, right? We can do whatever the fuck we want to them in that regard. The immorality comes from when we understand that there's a transferability of behavior that we engage with conscious creatures, right? So if someone is a conscious like we recognize that animals have mirror neurons. We recognize that what you do to animals, right, says something about your empathy, says something about who you are as a person. And when a person, right, kills an animal, right, in the most ethical way that they can, as quick as painless as they can, for sustenance, for a purpose, for gain, right, for something that is life affirming, which is the ability to eat food, that is not an immoral thing. But when someone is doing something that is not life affirming, and the only personal gain is hedonism, and there's no health benefits to it, in fact, there are health problems to it, we recognize that this is a person that has problems that could be transferable. So while killing a cow for food
wait.
very
This sounds like
different than a
consequentialism.
serial
This feels
killer.
like consequentialism, and I'm pretty sure you are
What if there was
vehemently
safe
opposed
dogs?
to consequentialism.
So
No,
not
it's
only
not
is
consequentialism.
this is absolutely hardcore consequentialism, but the second
No,
point
it's not.
is that so if you live in America and you have any kind of disposable income, the only reason why you eat beef is for mouth pleasure. Okay, you'd be healthier off a vegetarian diet. You
That's
just
not
would
true.
be.
Yes,
a
it is.
Mediterranean and a vegetarian diet are consistently healthier for you if you live in the United States and you have a disposable income.
Wait,
The
but
only
that's not
reason
the only reason.
That's
Why
not true.
else
Like,
would you?
people
Why
eat
else would
beef.
you? Why else would you eat a McDonald's
Red beef
sandwich?
Because you're
Perfect.
fucking raised around it. That is the
Okay,
norm. Like, it's for
McDonald's
some
is-
reason
No, I'm not
humans have
asking-
eaten
I'm not
meat
asking-
for a
I'm
very
not
long
asking-
time.
No, I'm not asking this kind of cultural. We've done it for a long time. We've done it for a long time has been used to justify every
No.
bigotry.
Yeah,
ever.
No, it's not just that we've done it for a long time. Eating meat for some reason is like it's like about pissing,
It tastes
peeing,
good.
shit, like anything we do, shitting, farting, coming, like
What?
Okay,
it's
that
a
doesn't
normal
matter.
thing we
That
do.
doesn't
It's
matter
healthy
in
for you.
terms of the
Vegetarian
argument.
is not healthier.
And I actually don't
Vegetarian
want to
is less
spend all
healthy.
day on this. So, like, let Lactoid get to his point.
Yeah. So You're healthier being a vegetarian or living on a Mediterranean diet. In fact, the World Health Organization has designated red meat as a carcinogen. Eating beef is not good for you. In the United States, we eat way too much fucking beef. When you work at a slaughterhouse and you're slaughtering beef, you're not helping the country. You're actually actively harming the country.
So is that eating beef is not good for you? Eating too much beef is not good. Is eating beef not good or too much?
Especially in a country with high
propaganda.
Especially in a country.
Your science is shit.
I might be with Fabian on this. Is eating beef bad or is eating too much beef bad? Because I can agree, Americans eat way too much red meat, but it's not that eating red meat itself is bad. You can balance a diet, bro.
Let him finish.
Either way, I win, right? Even if
What?
if any beef is bad for you, then I win. If it's
drinking too much water is bad, right?
Let him finish. Do you know how to let him finish?
Let him get it out.
If Americans eat too much beef and you're participating in the slaughterhouse industry, you are actively participating in the degeneration of American diets and American health. So this idea that we're fostering life when we slaughter. Well, first of all, we're fostering life when we herd cows into slaughterhouses, when we keep them in cramped conditions and then we slaughter them. And by the way, I live in the dairy state. I can tell you, in order to breed cows, part of breeding cows involves taking a sperm sample, shoving your entire arm up to your forearm, and depositing the sperm into the vagina. Okay. If that's not rape, but someone's dick, which is much smaller than their forearm, is.
Yourself.
Well, what's interesting is they actually put one arm in the asshole, right? Put one arm in the asshole and then the other into the vagina. They actually double penetrate, rape the cows.
Dooby, we get that you are just here for memes, but no, I gotta get rid of all of this medical.
It's an interesting question,
which is a bannable offense on TOS, right? So let me explain the bullshit science. This idea that red meat is bad for you, right? I love that you're a libertarian and like you don't trust the globalist agenda, and then you're like, but the World Health Organization said, right? The nutrition science is so fucking bullshit on this idea. They do not properly look into diets. What they do is they take meat eaters and non-meat eaters. Non-meat eaters tend to pay attention to what's in their food. They tend to eat less processed food. They tend to eat. They tend to actually care about their macronutrients. Meat eaters do shit just like you said, which is eat at fucking McDonald's. All right, this idea, like we are coming around to
that's what Americans are doing.
That dietary fat from animal products is not only not bad for you, it's fucking good for you. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, this idea of like killing and harming animals, and this is why we shouldn't eat meat, is also fucking retarded, because when you have farmland, you kill so many fucking bugs and voles and vermin and runoff from fucking pesticides. Like, you're killing more conscious creatures eating fucking plants than you are when you're fucking eating animals.
Scott, you have to raise the vegetables to feed the cows.
Yeah, they have mouths that need.
Don't they eat like primarily
Jesus Christ!
Isn't that why they've not necessarily?
The cows eat vegetables, you know that, right?
Corn. They feed them mostly corn, unless they're grass or eating.
Was that just like a meme? Was that a fucking meme, and did I miss it? Look, that was a meme. I'm sorry, but like clearly we're growing more fucking vegetables.
What's going on?
I actually think what this is I think this is a position, and I don't care about like political identities. You can keep that all you want. I don't give a fuck. Okay, if you don't think I'm whatever, doesn't harm me nothing, because I have my opinions, and those opinions are backed by rationality. Now, when it comes to this, I think this is a situation where me and Prime have like the right opinion, but the right opinion is like kind of like off-putting to some people. And so you're saying like, oh, you're doing this for clicks. I think you're doing this so you're making your position so you won't lose clicks. I think that's what this is.
I agree with Lactoid. I'm on the same page as you, Lactoid.
Jesus, the counter.
We could hear you before. It's just that these degenerates are talking over you. Crew Kid, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
I just have one question. Are vegetarian diets healthier in comparison? Yes. Okay. In comparison to meat eaters that eat too much meat, or just meat eaters in period? So if I eat a moderate amount of meat and I am conscious about my diet, but I eat meat, am I less healthy than a vegetarian simply because I'm not a vegetarian? That's my question.
Okay. The vast majority of people, so when you use the term moderate, like what exactly is that? Most people, when they say moderate, like the dose makes the poison. Toxicology 101. You can say this about cigarettes. You can probably get away with smoking a cigarette like once a month. Okay, we don't have the data to support that. Like, yeah, but the prescription is you're generally better with like not smoking a cigarette at all.
Okay,
so do we have data saying, oh, when we take a cohort of people that they eat meat once a month, or like have a single serving of meat once a week? Do you have the randomized controlled trial to back that up, comparing it to plant-based and vegetarian diets? And like, I'm plant-based, and I'm pretty sure I'm like the healthiest on the panel here, and I'll fully back that up.
So if we don't have the data, maybe we shouldn't be making broad sweeping claims like vegetarian diets are healthier than meat eaters, period.
Robustly, you look at pretty much any population that is primarily plant-based, they just have low rates of cancer, low rates of obesity, they live longer, they tend to have higher quality of lives. Just overall, the data is robust. That is proven time and time again.
You can talk who's obese and fat, but that
you have nothing to back up your claims though, other than whatever. Some of the studies are flawed. All of the diet studies are flawed.
Do you have any studies showing that a dog licking a peanut butter off a dude's dick is going to cause damage to the dog?
Do you have any studies to show that a dog can consent?
No.
In the first place?
It's not that
obviously.
Animals don't need consent for anything, right? So
that's why Laxoid has its position.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we don't.
They also can't consent to being slaughtered.
Yeah, they don't consent to any of that shit that we do.
Being slaughtered seems to be kind of different than having sex with animals. Can you explain to me why humans are averse to that?
Fido, right? Is having a bad day, right? If it's time to go to the park, it's time to go to the park. Whatever, right? So, that's why I was asking, and like this, I think this thing about the vegetarianism is like a sidebar, right? Like, why is it?
Yes,
immoral?
let's please get back to dog fucking.
Well, look, come on.
That's what I really want.
You stated it, and you said it was obvious. I'm sorry, Scott. Like, your big brain is beyond me. All right, so please explain it to me. I'm fucking 3. Why? Like, it's immoral to fuck a dog
without consequences. Without consequences. No consequential.
I didn't engage in consequentialism.
Yes, you did.
I talked about trans.
Yeah, you brought up the zoonotic disease.
I didn't bring up zoonotic diseases at all.
No, I brought up zoonotic diseases.
Which is primarily from the meat industry.
There is no damage
when you're engaged. You're engaged in behavior as a human that is anti-life, that is anti-consent and anti-empathy. This is
like killing them.
Yes.
What's serial
killers, right? That strangle cats. And
I agree.
Bury them in their backyard.
What is
right?
I agree.
There's a
hold on. But if I'm giving my dog some peanut butter, like what? Okay, how is this like doing? How are you comparing this to like torturing animals? Right. So it's basically the dog doesn't know what's going on. It's basically getting a treat. Right. So like, what's the issue here?
The same person that wants to give fucking blowjob classes to teenagers in high school. Fuck
irrelevant. Right, hold on. Irrelevant. Can you explain how me giving my dog a treat, peanut butter, which the dog will enjoy, is more wrong because it's on my dick? Like, how is this suddenly like harming it?
Rather than on the plate. Like, I don't.
You're pivoting. You're pivoting to the idea.
I'm not pivoting to
harm to. You're giving me a loaded question based off of consequentialism that I'm not engaged in.
Wait, how is that loaded?
To try and force me. No, because I never said that it harms the dog.
You compared it to serial killers torturing dogs. Like, what do you?
I never said that it harms the dog. The dog
is
incapable.
Where is the harm?
The dog. With that? The very question of where is the harm, right? In doing this specific action is based off of this idea that morality can only be determined by consequences of harm.
You're the one who lives as a problem.
If you want me to engage in that specific narrow view, I can.
We're telling you not to.
Individuals, right, that fuck dogs, that are regularly engaged in their own human action and conscious decision to deny conscious creatures their body, engaged in having sex with something that cannot give consent, right? That is incapable of doing so, is a person that is engaging in behavior that I don't know how to say without.
But in
engaging,
Doobie's example,
why wouldn't you extend this to people again? Why wouldn't you extend this to meat eaters or like butchers or anybody who works in a slaughterhouse ever? Like, it doesn't make any sense. They're also denying the.
Sense. You're lying.
No, it does. It does not make sense.
No, if you disagree with me, that's okay to disagree with me, right? But to pull out the substantive difference that I've already mentioned and then say, why is there no differences when I already mentioned a difference, right? The difference is in option A, dog fucking, you have a human being that shows a lack of empathy, shows a neurochemical problem with their mirror neurons, right?
It sends so
you don't have that when someone slaughters an animal?
Reinforces
actually not though, Dooby.
Reinforces rape, that has a paraphilic disorder, that has serious problems and should not be allowed in society, versus someone engaging in a pro-life position, a pro-human life position, because that is what matters here, right? And engages in killing animals in the most ethical way possible.
Wait, why isn't using my dog as a masturbation tool also pro-life? Hold on. So I'm going to get some kind of pleasure right from this. The dog gets a treat, which it'll be much happier going forward. I'm going to get off, which makes me happier. And I know that there are a ton of like mental health like side effects that are positive that comes from having like regular orgasms. So what's the issue here? We're both having a good time. We're bonding through this activity. The dog's getting a treat. I'm getting some enjoyment. What's anti-life about that equation?
Well, I think the idea that you believe this and all of the other ideas that you've presented about women and relationships on this panel can show
totally irrelevant to the conversation. Totally irrelevant to the conversation. So there's actually there's actually a mini documentary by yeah, it's a stupid argument. There's a mini documentary by Vice, right? That I watched a very long time ago that I posted in chat for you. Right? Well, because you're speaking as if people who want to enjoy sexual activity with their property are like serial killers or something, and it's just not true.
It is because that shows you don't have lack empathy. That quite literally shows you lack empathy, Dooby.
No, it doesn't. It's the
yes, it does.
opposite.
If you can't empathize with an animal and put some type of like humanity onto an animal, all it shows is that you're going to look at these things like objects and rape them. If you can look at another human, just like you can look at a dog, you could do the same thing to a human that you would do at a dog. It's just property at that point.
Would you say the same shit about somebody who goes out hunting?
No, actually, because we don't see the same. No, we do.
Wandering out on its own, deer wandering around its own, enjoying its life, and some guy shoots him on the side of the fucking
head. We don't have to see the same thing because we don't see the same thing.
That's good. That's respecting the animal.
We don't see the same thing. We don't see the same thing. We don't see hunters who have like a predisposition towards that violence. We don't see people who slaughter animals having the same predisposition. But when people torture animals, we then can I finish? When people torture animals, we then see them like want to kill them, right? Or want to be like more violent towards human beings, have less empathy, right? When people abuse animals sexually, we also then see them have less empathy, and they probably will like be more of a threat in public.
Dooby, I know that you're not a serious person, but I'm just curious. Have you ever been hunting?
Oh god. Yeah,
have you ever been hunting? Okay, so what happens?
Yeah, I have.
Right. So what happens when you're in a hunt club, right? And you shoot an animal, and it's a really bad shot, and someone has to track down the animal, and they bleed and suffer for a long time. What do people say when that happens at the hunt club? How do people react to that information?
So hold on. So you asked me a different question. You asked if I've ever been hunting. I've been hunting, but I've never been part of a hunt club. But I know that when you are out hunting, people don't like when the animal suffers, right? They want it to be as quick and clean a death as possible, right? Obviously.
Right.
Sure. Okay.
It's like
but what we're talking about there is causing. What we're talking about there is causing some kind of like pain and anguish to the animal. I don't think that's always the case when you're talking about like having a dog lick peanut butter off your dick or something, right? The animals are not going to feel any pain in that
also,
situation.
Also, death is bad, not just pain, right?
Or if a dog
I don't think death is bad in itself.
To do and sticks a stick in a warm place and it has an orgasm. It's pretty cool with that, as far as we can tell.
Yeah, there's no pain there.
What if a kid just like walks up to somebody who's sleeping and just puts their mouth somewhere that they shouldn't be?
So we can have a conversation.
Well,
hold on, that's a human. So we compare. We care about the consent of human. We've already established we don't care about the consent of
animal. It was just walking there. It would just happened.
Oh no, we also don't hunt kids down or slaughter them. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we have like a value for children, and we also recognize like there is documented like evidence that this is not good for children, especially to their long-term like physical and psychological health.
Do you have documented evidence that this is good for dogs?
There is no such evidence that licking peanut butter off a dick is harmful.
Bad for dogs.
Yeah, there is no documented evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, you stated that like if people see this,
you guys want to fuck them initially, right?
I don't want to. I'm just defending them. Okay, that's it. Like, the same way I would defend dating.
Yeah, don't try to.
Choice consistent.
It's not going to work here. Like saying that's our position. It's obviously not. But like you said that if more people have sex with dogs, then people will have less empathy for dogs. Why is this particular activity, right, where you are pleasuring the animal, gives you less empathy? When you like pat the dog right in the head, where you scratch the dog, when you feed the dog, you play ball with the dog, you do all those things the dog likes.
2 words.
Right?
Yeah. So here's why they're different. Wait, so here's why they're different. Because a dog,
they're the same.
A dog isn't like a cow, right? I think one of the issues is you guys are trying to cut this to the meat, or they tried to cut it to the meat industry earlier. A cow is literally bred. None of us ever deal with a cow. I've slaughtered cows before. I've been a part of like getting my own meat, but like none of us care what's happening, right? We just go to the grocery store. Wait, that's separate from us. Wait, hold up. That's separate from us most of the time, right? Most people don't care about that. However, with a dog, for some reason, we as people put some type of value on it. We have some empathy towards this animal as like this animal is like protected by us. It's our ally. It's our partner.
Now, totally reasonable.
How common is this, Dooby?
Right? Go to fucking some place in China. They eat dogs. They don't.
Wait, they can eat it. They can eat it, but that's because that's a different value. They still.
Wait, hold on. So somebody
in China, do they allow people to have sex with dogs?
Those dogs
in China, are they allowing people to fuck those dogs?
Better? Because in their
do they allow people to fuck those dogs? Do they allow them to fuck those dogs?
I have no idea. I haven't looked into whether or not Japanese or Chinese people are fucking dogs.
We can look at.
I know that in Colombia, there's a tradition of like donkey sex, where for a lot of like young men, their first sexual partner is a donkey because they believe that it makes the little boys' dicks longer. Right? And in that situation too, the little boys are not hurting those donkeys.
How common is that at all?
Listen, mirror neurons.
Pretty common.
That is literally the answer. Like science has discovered. Right. Sure. We recognize dogs have larger amount of mirror neurons. Primates have even more, right? Cows have very few mirror neurons, right? These are right. Yeah. So mirror neurons are portions of the brain that we theorize, or I should say hypothesize, are deeply connected to empathy, the ability to be able to feel someone else's pain, suffering, etc. Right? When we attach ourselves to dogs, when we bond with dogs, right? It is the same process of our brain that looks at a dog in pain and thinks, oh my God, that poor animal. Then when we look at a human in pain and we go, oh, that poor animal. It's what allows us to empathize. It's what allows us to bond and have relationships with those animals. So when you're fucking a dog that can't consent and you're like, oh, I'm sure it likes it, right? You're engaged in the same thought pattern that you would be with humans. Okay. And it's just like, if you're engaged in this constant degeneracy of fucking something that can't consent because you fucking want it, and you just rationalize that, well, they must like it, they must like it, so it's okay, is the same type of behavior that someone does when they want to rape a woman and say, oh, she's wearing, slutty clothing.
Post hoc consent, bro.
I'm sure she'll fucking like it.
Can I address that point? Because I think you make a point, Scott. So if I can like sort of extrapolate, you're sort of alluding to like correlated behaviors of like, well, yeah, in this context, like this type of behavior is correlated to other behaviors, right? Is that sort of like a good summarizing of your overall position?
I would say that it's correlated, but I would also say that we don't have enough research to know definitively whether or not it could also be causal. Right, whether like I can't make a scientific claim that like simply isn't studied enough, right? But I would personally hypothesize that doing that over and over again would wound someone's psyche to the point where they'd be more likely to do it to humans, which is the real concern here.
Right. So yeah, I think
correlation is just the reason.
So the consequence of somebody fucking that animal and what this could lead to them doing in the future is what's wrong.
Well, so I think there's two issues to that, at least for me personally. Like, I think one, that's also, I think, appeal to like a consequentialism of like, somewhere down the road, this could lead to like negative consequences. And it's also interesting, like when I bring up correlated behaviors, like,
this is like,
sure.
But you guys would be even more fucking inflamed.
But it's interesting, like in this context, you want to talk about correlated behaviors. But when I bring up correlated behaviors of like, the behaviors of, people who are materialistic or have materialistic values, when I bring up consumerism and how those behaviors are associated with other negative things, then I receive like a lot of pushback from you.
Yeah, because
where it's like we can't talk.
You do it in things that are already proven by logic to be ethically unjustified. When you're in the domain of
your position is not logically justified either.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
When we're in the domain of justifiable, right? Then like while I dislike consequentialism there, and I prefer to look at things from a virtue ethicist position, right? There's nothing wrong with using consequentialism in the domain of justifiable actions as your moral compass. The problem is when you use consequentialism to determine morality on all things in the domain of things that are unjustifiable. For example, taxes. For example, any form of aggression. These are unjustifiable. You can't use consequentialism to determine the morality of them because they cannot be analyzed for morality. They're ethically unjustifiable.
I want to ask two quick questions.
Yeah,
first statement is there's no concrete evidence that dogs have mirror neurons. There's some people who theorize that they do. But you said
the science on mirror neurons is pretty.
Yeah, it's very iffy.
Mirror neurons is kind of cutting edge.
Sure, but you also cows don't. So my question for you then is, if you can kill a cow, can you fuck a cow?
Yeah, cow sex.
Again, no.
No mirror neurons there, right?
Right, but there are mirror neurons in the human.
Yeah, that's the human's problem.
Right, like when I brought up the mirror neurons in other animals, right? I'm talking about the fifis. Like, why do people have certain fifis about some animals and not others? What I'm saying is that what it seems is that they're able to reciprocate some level of neurological empathy, right? Whereas like a cow is like, I mean, if you've ever seen or hung out with a cow, they're fucking retarded. Right, what
about pigs?
They don't have a lot of empathy.
Pigs are equivalent to dogs.
Cows can be very sweet.
Yes, exactly.
You've been to a farm.
They can be sweet, but they're dumb as shit, bro.
So I think people very
there are
often
many dumb humans
overestimate
too,
how stupid they are. But what I would say is there's plenty of evidence that shows that slaughterhouse workers have PTSD, and there's a direct link between working in those industries and getting PTSD. And there could be some argument there. Yes, there could be some argument there that like human beings, when engaging in a traumatic situation such as slaughtering and shoving your entire forearm in order to violate a cow as part of the industry that produces meat, that there could be like some like psychological distress associated with that. I just think now. Maybe this isn't libertarian, but I have a belief that if you're an adult, you can consent to that. If you're an adult, you can consent to that sort of trauma or that sort of, that thing that you have to deal with now. I think that that's okay as long as, again, you don't violate the rights of another agent, such as a human. Right, and a cow is not an agent, right? Like you said before.
Right. What we're talking about is whether or not it's in the domain of things we cannot prove to be unjustifiable that we can then look at and make moral claims about. What you just described is why it's not against natural law, right? Like it's not against natural law to engage in dog fucking. Like I can't come up with a reason under natural law to use the police to kick down your door to stop you, right? Great. Now we're in the claim of what we can discuss from a morality perspective. I think you're going a little fucking psycho when you're like, what's wrong with fucking dogs? It's cool, guys. Like, it's a morally neutral thing to fuck your dog. I think we all intuitively recognize, right? So, unless you're fucked or unless you're so fucking deep down the stupid drain of, I know that you don't,
like
but you're fucked in the head.
No argument.
So I think this is like a.
What do you mean there's no argument?
I think there's like a different philosophy here. Maybe like when I think something is morally bad, I think that like bad morality, I think is justification to enforce, is to actually bring down law, right? It's immoral to kill somebody. That's why we can have it, to be illegal. So I agree with you that it shouldn't be illegal. I think I would probably go further and say I wouldn't condemn somebody who was going to do it. I definitely wouldn't arrest them. But currently we live in a world where they get arrested and they get charged with felony and they get locked in a cage. So at the very least, we could be allies here.
That's a lie. Because what you said
in my
initially
state, it became a felony.
Is that you thought it was a bad thing, that she lost OnlyFans job.
Yeah. Well,
right.
No,
so what you were saying, right. So what you're saying is that you're not saying it's morally neutral. What you're saying is that it's morally good because you are upset about right of association and you want to get rid of right of association for people.
Absolutely not.
People,
absolutely not.
Right?
No. No. Anybody should be free to fire somebody for any reason or no reason. If her employer didn't want to work with her, they have the right to fire her. I agree. I just, in the same way that if you don't want to hire somebody who's gay, you should be able to not have to hire them, right? I agree with that. I just wish,
so
on a personal level,
good
on a personal level, like I wish we lived in a society where people's personal, sexual, as long as it's not hurting people, their own personal, sexual practices like people don't care about that. That's what I would like to see.
So hold on. So why is it that you lament the fact that she lost her dog if you value freedom of association?
Lost her job.
Sorry, job.
Did you get to keep the dog?
So fucking that dog.
Because I wish that a person didn't have a preference. Like I can.
You
have two things.
You believe that it's morally neutral, and you believe it so strongly that you believe that other people shouldn't fire people because they find out that they're dog fuckers.
Yeah. I wish they wouldn't. Here's a great way of saying this. Let's say you have let's say I go to work at a company and I find out this company just like fired a black guy for being black. I would defend the right to do it, but I would be a little bit disappointed that they did that. And I would say, you know what? I'm not really sure I want to work for a company that's going to fire a black guy just for being black.
But that's because you believe
the same way here.
You believe it's morally wrong, right, for them to fire a black person.
No, it's not. No, it's not morally wrong. No, it's not morally wrong. It goes against my preferences. I prefer to work somewhere where they don't fire people for being black. And I also prefer that this woman wouldn't lose her job.
You think racism is morally neutral? You don't think it's bad if someone's racist?
I think it's a preference in the same way some people prefer blonde hair and some people prefer brunette hair. Some people prefer white skin and some people prefer black skin.
This is what happens, right? Prime Cayes, this is what happens when libertarians don't separate morality and descriptive legal systems. This is what happens. Is that
have you done to your people?
Confusing the two together. And once something is determined not to be aggression, they think it's either morally neutral or like everything's A-okay, and they stop making moral decisions about things that aren't aggression. And I'll leave it at that.
So can we swap this in for one of the panel questions?
Yeah,
right.
I want to say
I actually feel like this is way more interesting.
If we're gonna make like moral condemnations. So if you're making a moral condemnation without any kind of prescription, I think at that point it's just bloviating. You're just saying, I think it's wrong, and I just do, right? I don't give a fuck, right? You can say, if you think it's wrong, either you stop it, or you say, I just have a preference against this happening. Those are the only two options. And that's the only two things that can happen.
There's a legitimate way to stop it, though, right? Lactoid?
There's what?
There's a legitimate way to stop it.
Contracts.
Just to separate.
Yeah, contracts are just merely enforcing preferences. It's an agreement, right? Like in the same way, like I might prefer.
But you lament the contract.
You were mad that she got her. You were mad that she got broken out of the contract.
I prefer to not fuck dogs. I would lament a society in which non-dog fuckers got fired, because then I would get fired, and I don't want to be fired. But they have the right to fire me.
And like you can like contracts, like the the concept of a contract and everything about contracts, but this individual contract and how it's executed, you might not like. I don't know. I think it's pretty simple. But go Crew Kid, and then Dooby, want to say something?
Just a quick question: is the overall debate you guys are having whether or not she should have been fired, or whether or not this should be legal or morally acceptable? What is the
whether dog fucking?
I think it's both. I think it's both.
Yeah, I think it's kind of been around the whole thing.
We're all hold on. Most of us are on board with legality. A smaller group is on board with normalization.
So
I mean,
okay. What do you mean by that? Legality? No, like what are you talking about?
Yeah. Can you? Yeah, please explain.
So legality is we don't think the cops should come kick down your door and throw you in a cage for doing it. Normalization normalization is what I think where me and Scott do disagree, which is I want to live in a society where people don't care. And people aren't firing
it's okay to fuck dogs.
Yeah, like you find out like this adult's fucking a dog.
To use your language.
We're like if a dude decides to go to a pet store and purchase a hamster, then use it as a fleshlight. Like that dude will not be punished anyway.
Before you fire her, so don't lament being fired.
What the argument?
Sure, they have the right to be fired, but in the same, like I said, I could also be like upset that they fired her in the same way you can support them firing her. It's just a preference statement.
Will you guys go at it again, please? I just want to.
I want vanilla.
So like if this is
ice cream, but I don't want to illegalize chocolate ice cream.
Listen, it's already pretty.
Wait, so if this is like a sexual orientation, right, that she has like no control over, like is this in some way like discrimination?
Yes.
Hey, Lactoid, I have a quick question for you, right? If you have a son and a daughter, right, and they're toddlers, and you're hiring a babysitter, right, and one of the babysitters, babysitter A and B are basically the same in every regard, except babysitter B, right, has an OnlyFans where she likes to fuck dogs and get fucked by dogs. Who are you letting watch your children?
So likely the person who doesn't have that, unless the person with the OnlyFans like can guarantee me that like that element of her life is
They're
not
gonna fuck your dog.
It's not gonna like come.
So if they can guarantee you would prefer the dog fucker versus the
no,
non-dog fucker?
No, it would be a flip of a coin then at that point, as long as it wasn't going to affect my child.
What if the other babysitter like getting pissed on and shit on during sex, and you knew this somehow, right? Like, would you still prefer that one over the dog fucker?
I would cancel my plans.
I feel like I'd prefer.
Yeah, just cancel plans at that point, right? Like, you're better off.
Anybody who's bringing in their sexual preferences to my kid isn't getting hired.
No,
but if they do that on their own time,
no.
Hey, you just you look at the Twitter and you found out, hey, this person likes getting shit on the chest during sex.
No, you just went to her Twitter account because you're, presumably a good parent and you do your due diligence.
And it's naughty princess.
And to make sure the person that's watching your kids isn't a psycho, and you find out that her Twitter page is just full of dog fucking. Are you letting her watch your children?
Yeah, no. I'll bite the bullet here. I'll do it. Yeah, if like she is.
Yeah, I think it's fine so long as I don't have like a.
Yeah,
I can trust her to like have sex with my dog. Like I don't really care.
Like a dog fucking doesn't mean child fucking or child endangerment or anything right there. If she's going to now, if she
don't even have a dog,
herself, hold on, just like a heterosexual woman, like a straight up heterosexual woman who likes men, big fan of men, right? Who would be watching my kid. If she fucked a guy in front of my kid, I'd have a problem with that. And if that's what she's planning to do, then no, you shouldn't be like anywhere near my children. However, if you have this predilection and you are fine with kids, you nurture children in the way that I expect a babysitter to nurture a child, then yeah, it's okay.
I mean, you bit the bullet, so like the audience can think for themselves.
The bullet is there to fight. That's totally normal. There's a separation.
Private life and totally what does the real world think of this?
To think of to just be like, I went on my babysitter's Twitter account, and there's just nothing but dog fucking. And I was like, why would I let them watch my kids?
I said it was fine. But I said it was normal. This shit is fucking weird. Like, this is some weird shit.
You know what? Like,
no.
How does their Twitter account
in terms
affect
of whether
their
or not
job
you
as a babysitter?
fired from the job is probably considering whatever, depending on what the job is, right? So like
Twitch panels abandon all hope ye who enter.
CEO, right?
That's fucking psycho.
Would you want to live in a?
I'd compare it to any like weird sexual kink. Like, what's the problem? I'm sorry, what was that, Kasimir? I spoke of you.
If I could have.
We spoke at the same time. I just had a general question. I think that it's sort of worse. You should look at the overall case first. It's not just you have these two babysitters, but how about just having that babysitter within your society? Do you consider that wrong? Like, I would consider having that babysitter in the same society as me as a degradation of my society. So I would want to be as distant as possible from such babysitters, and generally, and I want to generalize it, people that commit crimes against themselves, people that degrade their own humanity, like that type of, I would define as degradation of their humanity, and I would want to separate from them in anything but perhaps material trade, and even then I would have to think twice.
Yeah, I don't know. I think these are.
What is your line for that? Hold on. So like, because like someone said that like a woman like allowing her boyfriend to like put his dick in her ass, right? Because there was like some pain involved. That's like a degradation of her like humanity.
Eating ass
or her
is
womanhood.
Way worse, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with
that all the time.
But so disgusting.
You're not
Wait, did you just eating ass is worse than having sex with a dog?
No, that's not what he said.
I would say that. Yes, I would. Eating ass is disgusting.
Dooby,
come on, like that's a little
character.
Eating ass.
Hold on.
Neutral and there's nothing
I'm just thinking about the shit bacteria there. Like I'm like very like anti like shit germs in my face.
You accidentally broke character right there because
I didn't break shit.
Listen,
Dooby, I don't want to hear you lie. Wait, I don't want to hear a lie from this man right now. Dooby, I know what this man has said about vaginas. A dog's vagina is way too dark. I don't want to hear this shit.
Okay,
plenty
of dogs have very light-skinned vaginas. Don't ask me how I know this. So Kasimir, what's your line for like? So you said someone like disrespecting their humanity or degrading their humanity, right? So if a woman is allowing her boyfriend to put his dick in her ass, right, which causes some pain for women and is not like pleasurable for lots of women, but it's something that they do as like a mental power thing. Right? So like that woman, would you not allow her in your society because she's allowing this to be done to her?
Yeah, in terms of preferences, I would prefer against it. Now, there is like a gradient, right? If somebody is doing something It's like I would prefer that to be a taboo. If somebody
You'd
wants
prefer
to do
society
something,
free of ass fucking.
if somebody is, so this is there's sort of a sliding slope here, or like a substitution, a Mott and Bailey perhaps, where I'm asked two questions: whether what do I find worse, finding out about this? If I never find out, then maybe it's people commit sins and crimes against themselves all the time. They eat, too much. They don't exercise too much. They do a lot of things that are sort of various degrees of self-harm.
Sure.
And there's a difference between somebody doing that in the privacy of their home, sitting there with a pint of ice cream instead of a few spoons. Like that's already perhaps some degree of that, right? Or going to the extreme that you expressed, which is any form of anal sex. It's one thing to actually do it in the bedroom. It's another thing to advocate to normalize it in society.
Nobody here is advocating for like normalizing public anal sex, right? No, he's not.
Literally. Lactoid is for normalizing like having sex with dogs, not public anal sex, right?
It's speaking about it.
Can we legalize dog prostitution?
Appear on Twitch panels without any embarrassment that it would cause. It's being shameless about it. It's that I believe.
Why is there shame attached to this? Like, so if this is like a sexual preference that people have, some people really enjoy anal sex. Like, why should they be ashamed of this?
I think that there are functional reasons why it is a potential damage risk, and those functional reasons were why it became a cultural taboo. It's because it caused
consequential reasons.
Yes, those were consequential reasons.
Interesting.
But the consequentialism specifically, that's a common misconception.
Do you think that oral sex is degrading in the same way?
The morality is prioritizing healthy human life. That's deontological. Now, how you reach there is a consequential analysis. Consequentialism is placing the analysis above the priorities.
Yes.
Which is.
Do you believe that other forms of sodomy, right, like oral sex, are degrading in the same way? And would you prefer against having those in your society?
So anything that gets you in contact with a place which can spread pathogens, I believe is like some form. Even you had this argument a long time ago on the panel where you argued on a degree of cleanliness and how clean it actually is, and we have a scientist here in the panel that can tell you that nothing is 100% clean. So there's a degree, but the question is, you're not proposing that we occasionally make a mistake. You're proposing that we don't recognize that it's a mistake at all. We don't recognize there's something bad about it. We sort of promote it as, and then we eventually teach it to our children. That's where the sliding.
I guess what I'm asking you to do is explain why it's a mistake in the first place. Like, why is it a mistake to have oral sex with your partner or have anal sex?
Increase the risk of pathogens, I think.
That's it. Like, hold on, but there's a risk of like pathogens when you're having normal sex or you're kissing somebody,
or when you walk into a room with
hold on, should we
on.
prefer against kissing because there's an increased risk of pathogen?
It's a degree, right? In Europe,
well, the pathogens are different too. To be fair,
equivocate here between the touching of your mouth to directly on an asshole, and other
okay, that I agree is degenerate. Okay,
unclean,
totally degenerate.
But the stigma existed for a reason.
Prime,
right?
you're fucking nasty. What the?
And the stigma should keep existing. You want to remove it. It's not just that we're not talking about outlawing something, but we're talking about whether there is something bad about it. And I presented a standard. I do believe that some things are like some form of a violation against yourself. Now, I don't think you have a standard for that. So for you just, I think it would be equivalent, right? Those actions are the same. Kissing somebody is the same.
I don't think that there's any shame. So if I hear that somebody has like performed oral sex on their partner or a friend or whoever the fuck, I don't see anything shameful about that.
Can you not soften
like I don't understand like why you're.
Can you not soften it though?
Soften it how?
Just stick to anal sex. Do you think there's nothing shameful about anal sex?
No, I don't think there's anything shameful about anal sex at all.
About the possibility of the quite significant possibility of damaging.
Yeah, of course
your
there are
sexual
risks of like
partner by
damage.
using
Yeah, of
body
course.
parts against the way they were.
Well, hold on. So I would think there's something
intended.
shameful about engaging in anal sex without like any kind of preparation or research into
Right,
how to
so
do
don't
it
talk
in
about
the
kissing,
safest
you
way
know, but-
possible. However, but that's like a different thing, right? I would say the same thing about like normal vaginal sex. I would say, hey, if you're getting into normal vaginal sex and you don't know what the fuck you're doing, or you're just going super hard when your partner's not ready or whatever, then hey, yeah, there's something shameful about that too. In the same way that it'd be shameful to do that with anal sex.
You know what?
Yeah, so the issue
I'm
there
gonna be honest.
isn't that you're having the anal sex, it's that you're not like preparing for the damage you might do to your partner if you're not careful.
I'm gonna be
You're not
honest. You guys
taking
might have changed my
precautions.
mind about the dogs.
One at a time, baby.
I'm
I'm gonna be
The
honest.
issue with the dogs is
Next, socialism, right?
it's
No.
closer to degradation.
Well, socialism is kind of what leads you down to like dog fucking. I feel like most socialism.
Well, didn't Vosh say something about
Hello.
horses?
Yeah,
Can
he
I
did.
clarify, Kasimir? So,
He's a
like,
libertarian, though, isn't he?
your argument of like, you know, so it seems like your position is like, you know, you're against, you know, sexual acts with dogs because, you know, it's a degradation of you as a person, basically, you know, you're doing something to humanity. So does that extend also like to you know, killing animals as well? Or just
Because I've changed my mind on it. Yeah, I think it's okay to kill animals. I don't see what's really wrong with if.
Kasimir, I'm asking Kasimir.
Oh, okay.
No, you can go after, but I'll try to be really, really brief. Humans are capable of argumentation and capable of rational thinking. That's the distinguishing sort of cluster of abilities between them and animals. And so the reason why it's all cruelty against animals and all violations against animals are bad is only to the extent that they damage the human. So I totally agree that if somebody gets damaged by working at a slaughter factory,
Yes.
maybe they shouldn't work there, and somebody who isn't damaged should work there. And there are such people, and there's a degree of possibly exposure. There's maybe we should improve operations where they don't require observations of brutality to that extent. There's somebody who, again, good example, somebody who's hunting and opening up an animal and skinning them alive, like skinning them after they're dead. That is very gruesome, but if they're used to it and if it doesn't damage them, and it's something that they do as part of a hunt, then I don't see a problem with it.
So
It's the
then-
same scale.
Okay, so can't we make the same clarification? Like, as long as you can prove that there's no damage when you have sex with dogs, then it's like a filtering effect. You want to filter who can work in a slaughterhouse. You can also filter who can have sex with dogs. Like, as long as you prove, like, there's people who are damaging their humanity, and there's other people who are not damaging humanity, and they can engage with sexual acts with dogs.
No
It's not-
pathogens.
It's not just
Not the kid.
it's not just physical damage. I think there's also just a degradation of what it.
Eddie, why are they
there's-
talking about
there's
dogs?
important-
Of something that's called dignity. I know it's
Kasimir,
very hard
there's
to
a distinction that
explain it.
needs to be
There's a
cut
difference
here. There's a distinction that needs to be cut here, and this is the distinction between like whether or not we look at something as immoral, right, or whether or not we have preferences, right. And so when you're talking about the slaughterhouse, or when you're talking about dog fucking, or you're talking about any of those things, the idea that some people, right, if you can find, a category of people, right, that are not harmed by this in any capacity and are not more likely to engage in bad behavior, and it doesn't worsen them, it doesn't harm their psychology, then we wouldn't necessarily say that it is immoral, right? We would say it's morally neutral. But that's different from the preferences. If there is some form of correlation, or if there is anybody that is harmed by it, right? So let's say 10% of people are able to engage in slaughtering humans without being psychologically damaged based off of the current process, right? That means 90% are. But because 10% aren't, right? Like we can fit this in a moral way, right? Like we can find out who those people are. We can allow them to do this without being damaged, as long as they do it in a humane way. But my moral preference, if let's say the 90% turn into serial killers, right, is that even though I can't say that it's immoral, my preference is to not do that, right? Because of the 90%. My preference is to say that it seems to be that a majority or enough people are psychologically harmed in such a way that I don't want them near me, or I don't want to hire them on a job, or I don't want them to be babysitters because I don't know what percentage they're in, etc. And so there's a distinction between morality, immorality, and whether or not we have a kind of a what you might call a moral preference.
I've changed opinions on this. Wouldn't like first of all, don't we already kind of do that with the military? We give like a portion of Americans a license to kill. No, I've changed my position like on the original right now. You can fuck dogs. I'm all for it. Go ahead. I don't care. But you're a weirdo. You're like a really big weirdo. But on that thing, yeah, don't we already give like a certain
Look, by definition,
we give a certain
all sexual minorities are not normal, right? They don't fit within the normality.
No, atypical.
I don't know, like I'm gonna be honest, in my
atypical is just saying you're not normal. Okay, that's what it is.
I'm gonna be honest. In my opinion, I don't view it as the same as anal. If somebody's doing anal, like that's good for them. But if somebody's fucking a dog, like you're kind of the same as a pedophile in my eyes. Like good for you, but like
no. So going back, I wanted to say one thing, Kasimir. I think you would have to agree, and maybe you don't. I think you would have to. And I understand the empirical evidence on this is limited because of a small sample size. But I think I'd bet money that like we're talking about like pathogens and like STD transfer rates. I think like anal sex probably carries more of a risk than like letting a dog lick peanut butter off of your genitalia. And that could be like a bet.
A dog's mouth is really why you would reject some action.
We're talking about an anus, Prime.
Yeah, but we're talking about a dog's mouth, which is actually extremely filthy. So
there are also condoms that you could wear.
An animal. If you're
well, no, Prime. He cleans his dog's mouth.
So you think a dog's okay? I actually don't know this. Is a dog like a dog's mouth? Is that like? Well, no,
it's disgusting, bro.
Oh, wait, compared to a butthole, and then also when you look at look, I'm sorry, HIV transmission rates, right? You're not going to get HIV from your dog.
Considering they lick buttholes, yeah, I would say compared to a butthole.
I think we'll touch about it later, but it's also about
people brush their dog's teeth.
There's a word called debasement. There's a certain idea about what humanity represents, and then when. If you were to kill and skin animals and then dispose of the carcasses randomly, right? That's one thing, and then we would actually potentially consider that immoral. We would look down on it. We would have an intuition against it. Whereas somebody that hunts an animal, skins it, and then eats it, we have a completely different understanding of what happened there. One of them is like somebody doing something that's part of, the life cycle. And part of the hunt and part of feeding themselves and part of like being independent, and the other is just sort of sadistic fun that puts into question of how that person is thinking.
Wait, but we consider it sadistic.
Hold on, what about trophy hunting? Would you say like trophy hunting is immoral? Like if I shoot, like,
yeah,
say,
to some degree, I think it's wrong. Yes. I don't like them making a sport out of it. I think that debases themselves. Yes, for sure.
But isn't this cultural? Like, so because there are plenty of cultures where killing animals for no reason at all but for fun, right? The entertainment of it is totally acceptable.
Are less moral,
right? So why isn't okay? But it seems like you're just claiming that your culture has a correct view of morality on this issue, and theirs doesn't. But why?
Again, I think that we can look at what they're actually doing, and if they're doing a certain action just to derive pleasure out of it, and it doesn't serve the function of feeding themselves, the function that's
why does it need to? Why isn't the entertainment factor enough, right? So if I wanted to sit around and kill ants, right, with a magnifying glass, like, and I was entertained by this, why would this be wrong?
I think it's wrong because there's like the intuition I have against why it's wrong. It's because I don't think that the crew you should be I don't think you should be feeling like a pleasure out of being cruel. I think that if it's if some action occurs because it's part of something that you have to do to survive, it's like a part of your survival, then it's one thing. And then if you're doing it just for fun and you can avoid it, then I don't think it's the same thing.
Yeah, well, again, it just sounds like you're pointing to like a cultural difference, right? So there's some places in of course it's China, where they will eat some animals like alive, right? They'll eat like baby mice, right, while they're still alive.
Why do you keep saying?
Hold on.
Why do you keep
Go
lying?
ahead.
You're saying
what am I lying about?
Applying to a cultural difference, and he said, "Here's the difference," and then you just ignored his entire argument.
Because the difference.
You just keep saying it's a cultural difference when he's saying no. There's a difference between killing for enjoyment, right, for the pleasure of cruelty to another being, and enjoying that cruelty.
You're repeating the thing again.
I know that. Right. Well, that's because apparently you didn't hear it the first time.
Well, no.
Right?
So the reason I'm saying this is a cultural.
Listen, you know, as someone I know for a fact that you're very well aware of the history and story and the lives of a lot of serial killers, and you know that serial killers get started very often with torturing and killing animals, right? And then they upgrade to humans, right? It's the same. It's the behavior of torturing a conscious being to see it suffer and gain that enjoyment that is wrong. We're not talking about the cultural difference between one culture or another versus someone that is doing it for a functional purpose that is life preserving for human life.
It's not like
right. So this is why this is okay. So I understand the thing that he's pointing to, but I think him valuing this thing at all, right, is the result of like a cultural difference that he has with these other people.
I don't think
right?
it's
because well, let me lay it out. Because there are
hey, let Dooby make his argument.
Okay, so we could look to places like China, right? And I'm sure there are many other examples of this. I guess China's just one that it's on the top of my brain right now, where they'll eat animals alive, right? They'll eat baby mice alive, right? They'll just like dip them in soy sauce and eat them. Or they will cut a frog up, make sure it's still alive, and this hurts me a lot because I'm a frog. They'll make sure that it's still alive, and they'll eat its legs while the frog is like staring at them with its fucking like dead-eyed, so just like still alive, right? So like breathing somehow. And they do this because they think it looks nice. There's like artistic value there to them.
You ever seen the fish that they cut alive?
Yeah, I know that in some like places in China, they literally like butcher donkeys while they're still alive on the fucking street, right? They just slice out chunks of meat. Right? Hold on. So, but they don't place the same kind of value on these animals and their well-being and their mental states that you guys do. Right. So they don't consider it to be more immoral at all. So I'm asking you, like, what if this person hasn't been raised in a way in such a place that they're going to be taught to put any kind of value on this thing's well-being, or like they're like what's the word I'm looking for? Like avoiding pain for this creature, like unnecessary pain for this creature, right? If they weren't taught that, hey, if you're going to butcher something, kill it as quickly and humanely as possible. If they're taught that, hey, actually the pain makes it taste better, right? Which they do teach in some places. They're not. I don't see how that person is at risk of becoming like a sociopath or like a serial killer because they're just cutting this meat up because they think it's going to get them the best product, right? They're not doing it to cause pain to get enjoyment from the plane.
So have you ever read not William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass's autobiography?
A very long time ago.
Right. So in the autobiography, right, he talks about being in Maryland, right, and his slave owner, right, who was the woman of the household.
Yeah.
And how initially she was really nice to him, right, and she was actually really kind to him, and she treated him almost like another child. But how the institution of slavery and treating him like property kind of changed the way that she behaved towards him. And day by day, it got worse because the institution of slavery justified the idea that he was property and that she could abuse him. And so she eventually became just like any other slave master because of the seeming moral justification of the idea of him being property. Right now, in this culture, during the time, right, it was perfectly reasonable to own a human being as property and do with them whatever you wanted, especially if you were, quote, sold down the river, right? Because if you were in the cotton plantations in Georgia, your life was very different, right, than being a house slave in Maryland, right? And this was a threat to slaves that got like too, for lack of a better word, uppity. You might get sold down the river and live a horrible life, right? And so it's not the culture that makes the thing right or wrong, right? It's the action itself that is right or wrong. Sometimes we do what you might call a consequential analysis because we have imperfect knowledge to try and determine the morality of the thing, right? But it is that justification that a human being is property and you can do whatever you want with them that changed that slave master from someone that treated him like a human and a child into treating him like property that could be beaten for whatever reason just because she had a bad day.
Okay, but I feel like in this example, you're taking it as it's like a given, right? That there is something morally wrong with treating a human being like property, beating them, raping them, murdering them, etc. Right?
Obviously,
making it. I don't agree with that. Right? I don't think that that moral truths exist. Right? I know that you're like more realist. I'm not.
Can you come up with an
right?
example where it's okay to,
I think,
to own a slave as property?
Do you know that they don't exist,
wrong?
or do you assert it without knowledge, or do you ask for proof?
I asked for proof. I'm not. Hold on. I don't believe. I don't.
Positive claim about moral truths.
Well, what I'm claiming right now is that I don't believe that they exist.
Okay.
If you have some proof that they do exist, you can lay it out for me. Yeah, provide me some kind of. If you can find me some kind of proof that moral truths exist, I'll accept it.
In humans.
I'm sorry. What?
Okay, let's say that. Can I provide you right now, right this moment? Can I provide you any evidence to the source for gravity on Earth?
Evidence of the source for gravity?
Can I even define to you what gravity is using human language?
Why are you guys even defending moral truths?
I'm sure you could.
No, I can't actually. I can't. In fact, if you look at the science, the higher up you get up the tree of the research towards the source for gravity, the more nebulous it becomes. There is no concrete source. All we have are precise measurements of the effects. We measure the effects and we try to fit hypothesis after hypothesis to try to explain the whole system and to unify the different systems. And we still can't. We may be able to or might not. It depends on your view on the possibilities.
Incredibly easy to demonstrate.
Well, even measuring.
What's important
you
is
can demonstrate
noticing the effects, the convergence of effects in experiment over experiment is enough. And with gravity, it's sort of simple. You perform an experiment and you get a result. Now, with human societies and with morality, I would agree that it's more difficult. But you're claiming that no evidence exists for convergence. And I see I see a lot of evidence for convergence. The fact that we're speaking a similar language is one piece of evidence. The fact that most societies that survive, but perhaps that's part of the some moral fact required for survival or not. They do respect life, and they claim to value life, at least human life, or at least the life of their tribe. All of that is evidence for convergence. There are societies you can quote.
Well, no, when you say just really quickly, when you say convergence, when you say convergence, can you just lay out? So I think I understand what you mean. So you're saying like convergence in that like different societies end up with like similar moral systems or structures.
Not just
right? Is that what you mean?
They also have similar ways of codifying them. In legends, things like a hero, Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. Those tales are similar because the morals of the societies are similar, and they appear on different continents. Jean Piaget has something to say about why it might be that these morals appear, because when he experimented on child play, he discovered that certain things emerge out of just interaction, out of the game theory of the interaction. So all of those things are convergences that you claim don't exist. And I will agree with you that we may never discover something and point to it and say that's a moral fact.
Wait, hold on. So I never claimed that convergences, and if what you mean by convergences is that different human societies end up with similar moral systems, I've never claimed that doesn't exist. Of course that exists, right? But we also have cases where human societies have ended up with far, in a way, different human like moral systems, right? So I don't understand why some of these societies ending up with similar structures, and those currently being the dominant societies in some parts of the world, equals moral realism. Like, so again, we could look to plenty of places in the Middle East right now where they have hundreds of millions of citizens, right, living under totally moral systems that I consider to be totally alien, right? So I don't understand like how you're appealing to that as like evidence of moral realism.
It's because they're valuing different things, right, Dooby? Like these people in the Middle East, they set their standards as like, they set their criteria as like, we do X thing to get X outcome, and they get their outcomes, right? Like you're trying to tell Dooby now that your outcomes are better, but like you're measuring different things.
No, first of all, it is a big question of whether they're valuing different things. What I believe is that the real difference between those societies and ours is that they identify things differently. For example, they don't identify certain sexual minorities as equal. They don't identify certain expressions. They don't identify adult human females as equal. and because of that, they treat them differently. But they do have a moral standard for equals. It's just that they consider some things less equal than others. Similarly to the people in the Middle East, there are progressives in the United States that make distinctions between humans, and similarly to bigots in the Middle East, bigots in the United States give moral preference to certain humans over other humans, and it's a similar type of sickness. It's not that they claim different moral values, actually. It's that they literally make a distinction between humans and claim that a distinction is significant. That's the error.
Wait, hold on. That doesn't. So them having any kind of preferences or differences in value between like one type of sexuality or identity and another, you're pointing to that as evidence of moral realism? If I understand this correctly,
that what they're doing is there is the moral, and then there's the group. The morals are universalizable. So, for example, Christian morals are universalizable to all humans that are created in the image of God. Well, Muslim
morals are different.
Unless you're gay.
Universalizable to all Muslims, right? But they don't consider in the way they don't consider women to be whole humans, and they don't consider people that are
That's not true.
heretics or have sexual deviances.
No, it's
as
literally
being
true.
Equal to humans.
The Quran states that a woman's testimony in court is worth half that of a man.
That doesn't mean that they did. But
in order to
that
testify.
doesn't mean that
because
she's not a
they're
whole
considered
human.
a whole human.
Yeah, it's not because she's not a whole human.
Right, but she's otherized. She doesn't have the same rights, right? It's not about
She has
value,
different
it's that
rights.
She's right.
Like gay people under Christianity.
Exactly. Morals are universalizable, and yet those morals
Also,
are not
don't we-
universalized to women because there's a category error where they don't treat humans of a specific category the same as they treat other humans.
Wait, why are you guys
But
pointing
you
to
also
Islam
don't
as
treat
if this
humans
is
as
such a wait, Dooby, wait 1 second.
just
Why are you guys
Islam,
pointing to
I also
Islam
pointed
as
to
if this is like a
progressive.
crazy as if this is a crazy thing? Even normal laws do that. Like in America we do this because it's really crazy when you have to like prove if somebody raped someone or not. There should be like some type of standards, right? Like it just seems like they set different values in different places.
No.
I think that if you look at their core values converge quite heavily with ours. The divergence is because of exactly the category error that Scott identified, which is they categorize different groups of people. They're more, I should say, tribalistic in the way that they engage with morality than some groups. They have more in-group preference, and that in-group excludes.
We have plenty of that in the United States. Like, Kasimir, I don't know where you're from, but like, there's plenty of in-group preference in the United States. This is why, like, Jerome killing some people, right, and killing 30 children. Okay, well then, what is the distinction here? Because it seems like all you're doing is saying, hey, all humans, right, have like in-group preferences and prefer certain things over other things, so therefore more realism. Like, what are you actually pointing to? That is like a concrete moral truth that we can look at.
I'm pointing that the reason why people don't rebel against the U.S. government and don't line up in the streets, to overthrow a regime that would bomb, people exactly like them. Across the planet, the reason they don't do so is because they're able in their mind to otherize them. It's not because they consider bombing people, morally acceptable, or killing innocents morally acceptable. It's because the media is demonizing that other group, and they're able to otherize them. That's the only thing that prevents the rebellion.
No, I disagree on this part. Like, I disagree, definitely. I think there's one reason why it could be a reason. When you had people saying, hey, let's glass the Middle East, right? Like, at that point, like, directly after 9/11.
Me for real.
There was a lot of otherizing happening.
Islamophobia.
True, right? But there's all kinds of reasons why people don't do that. One, because they don't care. They simply can't empathize with them. Not because they're specifically antagonistic towards them, right? Or there's a force telling them to be antagonistic towards them, but they just don't empathize with them. Beyond that, ignorance, they don't know what's happening, right? And then it's just like a sense of powerlessness that, like, even if I do stand up, then I can't change anything. There's like and there's more reasons I'm sure we can come up with.
You're absolutely right, Prime. But do you understand that this actually supports my argument? Is that we all recognize that if we had empathy, meaning if we could say that the differences between us are like irrelevant, that to the extent that they're irrelevant, we should apply the same standards. We should universalize. And so some cultures universalize less than others. Now, I do believe that it actually affects their efficiency. I do believe that one of the manifestations of your ability to universalize is that all cooperative actions increase. So you're able to trade more, you're able to absorb ideas better, you're able to maintain standards better.
Societies that start to educate women is like almost the best way to increase GDP, right? You want to increase GDP and you want to like fix a third world country, one of the best things you can do is begin educating women, right? Like, because that's a process towards, equivocating equality, right, between the sexes. And so, yeah, no, I mean, like, I think Kasimir made a mistake by saying, by saying that it's the only reason, right? But I do think you would see a huge change, right, in everything if all of a sudden, instead of bombing people in the Middle East, instead of invading Somalia, instead of sending troops into Syria again for whatever reason, instead of sending hundreds of millions of dollars of weapons into the Middle East with our taxpaying dollars, into Eastern Europe to then be sold into the Middle East, or sold to Turkey so that it can immediately be sold to terrorists. If we start doing all of those actions against Texas specifically, I think you would see a drastic change in the behavior of people in America if we just started droning random people in Texas, right? If we said, Texas is a problem, they don't believe in trans rights, you can't get hormone replacement therapy till 21, we don't like them, they're doing all kinds of bad shit, so we're going to start funneling hundreds of millions of dollars in weapons to terrorist groups to overthrow Texas. We're going to try and overthrow we're going to overthrow the governorship. We're going to bomb random people in Texas. All of a sudden, I think people would be radically different in the way that they feel about the government's actions than when Biden goes, hey, I pulled out of Afghanistan. And then, 2 days later is like, by the way, I sent troops to Somalia, but pay no attention to the man behind the mirror.
If we continue your idea, there is a method for the government to bomb Texas, which is for 5 to 10 years prior to that, Texas should be systematically demonized, otherized. The distinction should be made between people living in Texas and people living elsewhere. It should be called a flyover state. It should be said that it's anti-scientific and anti-intellectual, that there's nothing of value there. Its traditions and customs should be belittled and mocked in the media. There should be pictures of vermin running across a field right before a Texan is about to speak. We should make movies demonizing them as a people. And then eventually,
it sounds kind of like what's happened to dog fuckers, right? They've been demonized in our culture,
right?
and now you're okay with them being fired for their sexual preferences,
and thrown in cages if they get caught, and all this. Yeah, now
nobody's
so again, this is just cultural.
Dog fuckers in cages.
That's what happens in American society.
As a representative of the great state of Texas, y'all can shut the fuck up. You could try to demonize Texas. You could try. But it's going to be really hard when this state is growing so quick.
It's
going to be so hard when the sun never sets on Texas. Just know that.
I mean, one thing we're not considering is that Texas has the most lions and cats per capita anywhere in the world, right? So I mean, if you try and invade Texas, literal lions will come out.
And possibly nuclear weapons.
But we just, because you guys, thank you for doing that, for taking it back, as I was about to put a stop to this, because
this isn't even a fucking topic.
Yeah, so
it's the most important topic.
Going back, right?
That, by the way.
Dooby brought it back, and Kasimir, you can answer that, or address it anyway. That this sounds like the demonization of people who are dog fuckers. Right, and it seems like if we grew up in a different cultural context, in which it wasn't a big deal, that it's just a thing that your cousin Terry likes to do, right? It makes him happy, so we just don't say anything about it, right? If that's just a thing that happened, then we wouldn't have these reactions. But you can respond.
So it's hard for me to respond without, it's not a dodge, but it's hard for me to respond without having an equal set of values, or at least understanding the set of values of Dooby. Because what I would say is that, that I believe that humanity. So I'll make several statements, and then it will reach the understanding of why the dog fucking is bad. I believe that humanity should perpetuate itself. I believe that in order to have any moral values,
Can you get
should
your
have
mic closer to your mouth?
underlying value.
Hey, could you get your mouth
Yeah,
closer to your mic?
You're a
Your
little
mouth
low
closer to your
volume.
mic.
Yeah,
just
let's fix that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we want to
I
hear
see,
more
I
of
see.
you, Mr.
Windows is
Ow.
silencing me quietly.
It's much better.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, it's
Humanity should
actually
perpetuate
fighting
itself.
against my attempts. So let's list the values. So, and I believe that you disagree with some of these core values, and that's why we're talking past each other. So I believe that for any moral system, life preference has to be part of it, because you can't, like, otherwise it's a death cult. You don't prefer the continuation of life, particularly human life. So you should give some preference to humans or human-like beings in general. You should understand why you prefer them. You should prefer their continuation into infinity, into a really long time forward.
It's moving on.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then for that, you need to procreate. So procreation is part of the things that you value. And so sexual intercourse is used for procreation. And then all alternative uses of it become less moral by that extent. They become like frivolous. They risk creating life that must then be destroyed in abortions. And then you understand that when you use that with an animal of a different species, that if you were able to produce an offspring, it would be an abomination. Therefore, there's a degrading element of that attempt. It's a crime against yourself. It's degradation. It's undignified. And that's what makes it fundamentally a moral intuition for wrongness.
Yeah.
Kasimir, from your first point, doesn't that mean that we should be giving humans like a hierarchy over like their value of life over the life of dogs? Wouldn't that then condone dog fucking?
He's very quiet.
Yeah, you're also very quiet, Jay Chow.
Okay, this is always a problem. So from your first point, it sounds like we're putting a hierarchy of human life and pleasure over other animals and species. Can I say that?
No, it's not a hierarchy. It's like humans are in a different category. All of the moralities.
Sure, we're in a different category than dogs. So then why should we treat the same rules of consent to dogs than humans if we are in different categories?
No, I don't think it's about. I don't think the issue there. I'm not defending the position that you're violating the dog because of the consent issues. I'm saying that it is your nature of the human being and what makes you distinct from animals, from beasts specifically, that you're able to rationalize, you're able to have the spark of logic in you, that when you engage in intercourse with animals, that's the thing that you're debasing. So it's always coming back to human values. It's not the moral worth of the animal itself, isolated from humans, to me is zero.
Okay.
Now your voice is a roller coaster, by the way.
So why is there anything wrong with humans fucking dogs?
He just said so.
I mean, hold on. Would it be comparable to like masturbation to you? Like, or is it worse than masturbation?
I don't get it.
Kasimir,
when I hear you, everything that you're saying leads to it's okay for humans to fuck dogs.
I don't know how you got there.
Yeah, if you take
the
action and eliminate from it everything that I disagree with, then yes, the only thing that remains is things I don't disagree, like, that are irrelevant.
Well,
if it wasn't debasing, then I wouldn't be against it. Is that your claim?
I'm still trying to understand your concept of like debasement, where it's like, yeah, sexual acts with like dogs or non-human animals, like debasement, but like killing them like for food that's not essential, like that's not debasement.
Okay.
Like, I want to understand that distinction.
I think this can be made way more simpler.
It is essential to be independent.
Let's
no, it's not.
Let's say this, right?
Yes.
Let's separate.
Not in
this,
developed
right?
country.
No, hold on. Let's separate, right? So I think a great way to look at this is doing copious amounts of heroin, right? Now, and I think they're very similar. And the reason it's very similar, and why I would say it's morally wrong to do copious amounts of heroin, right? Now, because it is a crime simply against yourself, right? Because you're not aggressing upon anybody, I wouldn't say that you can use the power of the state, right, to kick down the door and put you in prison because you're doing copious amounts of heroin. But I would also say it is not morally good or morally neutral to kill yourself with drugs in a way that benefits no one except for maybe the pockets of the drug dealer, right? It is morally bad to do copious amounts of heroin, not because you're hurting the heroin, right? Not because you're doing something to someone else, but because you're harming yourself. It's not a morally good thing. It's morally bad, right? It's the same kind of logic that we're using in terms of dog fucking. We're not worried so much about the dog as a moral actor because the dog is not a moral actor. What we're talking about is the damage that you are doing to yourself and also the potential for what happens to other people, right? So like the heroin addict,
wasn't
right,
there a problem with consequentialism?
Oh my God, Jay Chow, step out if you can't keep up.
No, please.
We've dealt with this already.
Can I want to address that.
I'm just wrapping around. I feel like there's a lot of contradictions going on.
Well, there's not, because you can't point them out.
It's not consequentialism. Consequences is when the consequences themselves become the reason to do something. It is your choice of goal is some consequence.
Well, it sounds like you shouldn't fuck dogs because you are harming yourself.
That's not consequences.
That's an avoidance of a consequence.
I think you're redefining you seem to be redefining consequence.
I can open SCP right now and read to you the definition of consequentialism and definition of deontologism, and a deontological
Yeah, I'm probably flipping it around,
this
but
is morally
it should
wrong.
work
How do
the
I
same
avoid
way.
it? What are the practical steps to avoid it? Just being practical about trying to avoid something does not mean that you're consequentialist. It's the difference between the means and the goals.
Okay. Regardless, I still want to like return to your example. So I'm gonna try to like come up with a real world example that's probably somewhere down the pipeline. With the analogy of like eating animals or killing animals for food. Like so, somewhere 5-10 years down the line. Okay, using your concept of like debasement. Okay, so at some point there's going to be synthetic meat, from a vat, and it's gonna be side by side to and killed animal meat. Okay, and they're probably going to be price equivalent. So given that in that scenario, when you're walking by in the grocery store,
synthetic
I'm pretty sure
cheaper.
Okay, sure. Okay, that it works in my favor actually. So given that scenario, the person walking by in the grocery store, if the person chooses like the killed animal meat, are they debasing themselves?
I think that the problem with your hypothetical is that I think that at that point, maybe the issue is that it's like a science fiction scenario where
that's a pretty weird real world scenario.
No, so far every single attempt at artificial meat has been fraudulent because people don't understand what it is that they're trying to create. You're trying to create something, a simulacrum of something that you don't know what the constituent parts are, that there are research papers that are contesting each other about the parts of it that are required or not required, and you're also placing that responsibility on somebody that's hidden away versus the responsibility that's placed on it by human evolution and thousands of years of testing. So I would trust the evolutionary process over the scientific process that occurs by some IP holder monopolist in a lab that doesn't allow me to even look at his process or how he made his selections. I have a great issue of distrust. If all of those issues were resolved and I had a choice between synthetic meat and real meat, maybe I would say, synthetic meat is less cruelty, so let's go with synthetic meat. However, I would have no problem with you once a month going out into the forest, killing a deer and skinning that deer and making sure there's enough deer for everybody to do it once a month. I would have no moral problems with it.
No, that's not the scenario that I'm outlining, where it's like,
Yes, it is. You're telling me that me killing that deer would be wrong.
I'm going back to like the synthetic meat. I'm not talking about that.
It's highlighting the distinction for you, right? And you don't want to admit to the distinction. You want me to. You actually, as a vegan, you want me to never skin and kill a deer. Well, I'm telling you why I must. And part of the reason why I must is because I don't think that it's inherently, when it's done at such a scale, there's anything wrong with it. And I think it is important to maintain a certain level of independence, because it's as a survival strategy, at least, in case your great factory collapses tomorrow and I have to feed my own family myself.
So I'm not talking about. That's why I brought up like a grocery store. I didn't bring up you like you're alone on an island. You have to go like hunt some deer. I'm talking about like we get to the place of like at a molecular level.
I bit that bullet.
Oh, okay.
You will never get there. You will never get there because you can't even accurately describe it. What you're doing is this is the part of scientism. This is the fraud of scientism, where you believe that you can duplicate something that you don't even know exactly how it's being created.
We duplicate vitamin C in like a supplement, and that's an organic compound.
A protocell in a lab.
Yes,
and you're telling me that you're going to replicate something.
No, bro, that's not vitamin C anymore. That's a chemical at that point.
Sure, yeah, ascorbic acid in a capsule or a tablet.
Can you outline to me? Do you believe that you will be able to outline every single component that must be in that meat that is required for human consumption?
Yes, absolutely. We absolutely have the techniques to break down all the protein constituents and all the
and you're not missing anything.
Well, no, I think the hardest part. I think the hardest part for lab-grown meat was originally like getting the scaffolding, getting the same type of texture as like normal meat. But now they've been able to even get past that, or like they've been starting to make progress at like making like actual steaks.
So you're talking past the idea, right? Which is that you believe that you have perfect knowledge, right, of all of the compounds and all of the elements and all of the interplay between cells that are human and cells that are animal, right? And what he's saying, Kasimir is saying, which is true, right, is that until you have that perfect knowledge, which you're saying we have, you're saying you have perfect knowledge of how human cells interact with animal cells, which you don't. Right?
You don't have perfect knowledge of buying meat in a grocery store. Like you think.
Yeah, but we still eat the meat. The only thing we have to know is that it's the same meat.
The only thing we know is that
it's the same compounds, basically.
There's studies showing that, like, if you buy certain seafood, it's contaminated with a whole bunch of other stuff, or like whatever. The whale meat in Japan is not actually whale meat, or the dolphin meat.
Entire humanity surviving for thousands of years by eating this stuff versus you in a private lab, protected by IP laws, protected by copyright laws, protected by secrecy laws.
I never advocate for IP laws. You know that. I don't know what you're bringing.
I know that, but this is the dream you're selling. So let's abolish those. Let's abolish the state. Let's have competing companies producing synthetic meat, and let's meet up in 1,000 years when we will test it and make sure it doesn't lead to a human-wide extinction event. And then I'll accept your hypothetical, and I'll prefer the synthetic meat. I bit the bullet. What next?
So you're linking synthetic meat to some sort of apocalyptic event somewhere down the line? Unless I'm like totally misunderstanding.
That was also the justification for hunting.
If you could prove to me with the same level of certainty that this would not cause this was not cause any problems, then I would accept eating it. But in order to do that, you would have to demolish the entire system that is currently tasked to creating it, because the entire system is fucking corrupt, and I don't believe a word it says.
This can be extended to the entire pharmaceutical industry, and you should never have anything. So you would agree you should never take any therapeutic.
To the entire pharmaceutical industry, which is why the level of trust to them is below. If I go to a chicken farmer and I buy his chicken, I trust his process more than I trust a pharmaceutical company. Yes, it's an issue.
Kasimir, would you say smoking a cigarette is immoral? Like if I light up a cigarette in my own house, am I I'm committing a moral wrong, you would say? Yeah,
you're harming yourself. The degree to it is your decision, but I think you're harming yourself, yes.
Okay, I mean, like, once it's at that point where, you can't do, like, it's immoral to just do things, activities just for yourself and don't harm anyone else. I mean, I don't know.
Like dog fucking.
Because here's the thing, Kasimir. If we're gonna define it like that, if we're at the point where just like doing activities that either harm yourself or like a risk of harming yourself are now immorally wrong, then under that definition, I could agree that dog fucking could be morally wrong. In the exact same way, anal sex, oral sex,
masturbation,
it's a spectrum.
Going around, right? But we're talking about a spectrum of harm. I would argue that there's more harm associated with like anal sex than there would be for like certain types of bestiality.
Right, but you recognize
this empirical disagreement.
You recognize the only principal difference, right, between me right now. Right. Let's say I'm not doing it on stream, right? So that there aren't additional factors, right? But I close out the stream and I go suck start a shotgun and blow my brains out, right? We recognize that we would not want to live in a society that normalizes that and says that is morally neutral or morally good, right? You would not want to live in a society where the moment anybody just had a whimsical thought, they suck start a shotgun and blow their brains out, right? So that is the extreme. That's as far as it can go, right? is self-harm being normalized and being said that it's morally good or even morally neutral. We recognize that that's morally not good. So now all we're talking about is the gradient of how wrong something is, right? So it is also immoral, for example, to eat McDonald's, but we also recognize, right, that if an individual that an individual can have the freedom to do so, first and foremost, right, because it's not aggressive towards another person, right? But once it's in the domain of being able to say, is this moral or immoral? We can say, yes, it is immoral to eat things that are terrible for your diet, and yet we have a certain preference to how much we liken it to, like, how bad a person is, right? Like, if someone has McDonald's once a month, we don't say that's a bad person, I can't have that person around me, right? But if someone, for example, was a heroin addict, right, we would say that's a bad person. I don't want that person looking after my kids because I can't trust them.
Right.
For,
so, but
all these other things. Right?
It sounds like there's just right. I understand that. I just think that there is maybe an empirical disagreement then as to where dog fucking fits on the gradient. I think there's like a mismatch between the level of outrage compared to the actual level of harm. I think a heroin addict or like an alcoholic, that's, I agree, that's like pretty far down like the self-harm spectrum. I think eating like burgers every day is worse on the harm spectrum than like having your dog lick you out. I think that's like less harmful. So if we're gonna
You're analyzing things on one dimension only at a time, though. You can't like do 2 dimensions or 3.
You have to unpack that.
I don't know how to answer that question.
You're analyzing it only based off harm.
You're not doing.
No, we agreed that we only care about, like, we're talking about self-harm as to the person. We don't care about the dog. We all agreed on that already.
Yeah, but there's psychological harm to the person.
There's psychological harm.
And I think like that psychological harm is less.
Do you believe that humanity has dignity? Do you believe that the word dignity has any meaning?
I don't know. Like,
what's undignified about fucking an animal?
Yeah, so dignity.
That is true.
You have to explain to me what you mean.
Name the trait.
To the eye of the beholder.
Well, yeah, hold on. Just what do you mean when you say dignity?
You don't. Again, I asked you, but you want to answer it with a question.
Well, I'm clarifying your question. You asked me what do I think of, like, do I believe in this word? And my question is, what do you mean? What does this word mean?
You can't even intuitively understand that concept.
Okay, but his intuitive interpretation of that word is going to be, it's just going to be like full of the cultural context in which he's used that word and has been raised with that word.
You don't believe that those cultural contexts are convergent, that they believe that humans have, when you say that humans have a value, when you say that humanity should perpetuate.
No, there are plenty of cultures where they don't value humans in the same way.
I don't agree. I don't agree with Dooby here. I don't agree.
Because there are cultures that you would, from that perspective, you'd consider less dignified towards humanity and therefore more degenerate. And you would also, by the way, as a consequential, you would start noticing that, those cultures don't procreate as much. Those cultures have all kinds of
just not true.
problems.
They procreate more, actually.
This is irrelevant. Like, if what you're saying by dignity is just, do I value humans? Yes, I do value humans. And I value them so much that I think they should be able to make decisions for themselves.
Only as materials, right? As material robots. You don't believe that there's you don't have any preference for, any sort of goal, like discovery, or like the universe discovering itself, as Carl Sagan used to say.
Well, no, what they're asking you is, what is the goal that dog fucking like separates humans from? Like, how does that make a human less dignified? How does a human become less human for that?
I think I answered that before. Should I repeat it?
I mean,
humans graduating themselves.
You did answer. There's like a gradient again, and I agree. If we're going to define it that way, I agree with
Why?
you. Hold on, I'm going to agree with you.
The gradient is misleading. It's not an actual mathematical function. There's no there's no point where we can make a comparison. Right? So it's just like we're already talking about intuitive understandings. But you're claiming to me that there is no such thing, meaning that you can't distinguish beauty and ugliness is also cultural, right? Entirely.
Beauty and ugliness is entirely preference. Yeah.
And it's again, it comes from the culture that you grow up.
So is that like you're just using like convergence as like a fancy word for like
that's the evidence,
the fallacy of popularity,
yes,
right?
The evidence for aesthetics being real is both biological, meaning it's part of mechanisms to detect patterns, and we detect healthy patterns. That's part of it. And then also on top of that, the part of the evidence for aesthetics existing and being real is that when you show something beautiful to somebody, they tend to appreciate it, even if they're from a different culture. There is distinctions,
wait,
but
hold
the
on.
similarities outweigh those distinctions.
So this could be true. I think it is informed culturally, and even if you could prove there's some kind of like biological component for how humans tend to prefer patterns and symmetry and you know, at beauty as we recognize it, I don't say sure. I don't think that like is evidence that somebody has to think something is beautiful or that somebody should think something is beautiful. I think all you've proven is that some majority of people do think that this is beautiful, right? You haven't proven the normative claim. You've only proven the definition.
Let's ignore that every time we repeat an experiment, we get largely similar results. So let's throw out,
you're dealing with largely similar people.
Using the same logic, let's throw out all social studies. Let's just do it.
No. Hold on. If you only measure straight people, or you measure like the population generally, like men are probably going to rate women like very beautiful, like and maybe sexually attractive. But if you narrow that subset to gay men, you're going to have very different results. Just because some people don't fit within like the cultural hegemony. What? Well, just because some people don't fit within that. Why? Well, because
if I know that there's a category of gay men, why don't I separate the categories and say that
but we're talking about humans. You said
if gay men are sexually attracted, then they would be sexually attracted to a human ideal of the male body, right?
Sure. Or they could be sexually attracted to a dog, or they could be sexually attracted to anything.
It's arbitrary? That's meaning arbitrary. Yes, meaning it's chosen by you. Do you know what the word arbitrary?
I'm not sure if it's
not
chosen
based on reality at all.
No, arbitrary in the extent that the definition I'm using it, arbitrary here, it just means there's no fundamental basis.
No, that's wrong.
What is okay? Explain to me the reason why I might find a piece of art beautiful.
I just did again. And the word arbitrary specifically, if you claim that something is arbitrary, it means that it's based solely on preference as opposed to some empirical evidence, as opposed to having the evidence. And when you look at an individual, yes, there is in individuals there is great variety. But when you look at groups, at group preferences, you know that there is such a thing as there are fads, and then there is classical popularity, which occurs when over time people as a group keep preferring the
share
same thing,
preference,
which is why.
But doesn't that change? Don't those preferences change?
If I prove to you that most
cultures and areas and geographies.
No, if I prove to you 90% of people preferred vanilla ice cream, does that mean that ice cream is the good flavor?
It means that it could mean several things, but it would mean that there is something about vanilla flavor. Actually, yes, the fact that there are particular flavors that are the most popular and other flavors are not on the shelves is probably because there is some aesthetic of flavor towards vanilla, towards chocolate, towards these styles, and other things show up as fads, but are not as commercially successful because they're fads. So there is, yes, that's the evidence in my case. Another piece of evidence is when Dutch traders showed up in a completely alien culture of Japan, and they noticed Japanese art and Japanese prints, and they took them back as trade to Europe, there is some reason inherent why the aesthetics matched, why both societies preferred certain things and called them beautiful, even though they lived apart for quite a while in complete isolation.
Like, was that the ice cream? Was it like? Is it? Will we attach any morality to that, or will we say that like reveals a greater truth about humanity? Because 90% of people like vanilla.
No, it's immoral to not eat vanilla ice cream.
What it tells us is that if you reject evidence for commercial preference, if you reject evidence for gravity, for other effects you can't explain, you reject the evidence for convergence or for repetition. Repetition is the strongest, but convergence should also not be ignored. And you're saying, well, there are these groups that are divergent and they're a minority, and therefore let's ignore the fact that they're a minority and there's possibly a reason we can discover for the divergence, and let's ignore the evidence of the overwhelming convergence among humanity in various preferences.
No, who's ignoring anything? I don't know why you're saying that people are ignoring anything. People have acknowledged that there's a group preference, a mass group preference. There's a mass group preference for fucking humans. Okay, all right. Most people want to rub their genitals against a human. All right. And most of those people want to do it against like a human of the opposite sex. But then we have a subset of individuals, a large subset, who prefer to do it with people of the same sex, right? And that's
the same race.
Yeah, of the same race. Oh, there's that racism.
No, but, I'm pointing out he has to accept that like racism must be good.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah. So
racism must be good. Wait, I didn't accept that.
Hold on. So if we know there's like racial preference, like the general racial preferences when it comes to like sexual partners,
it's not the same as racial preference. Is not the same as racism. So be very careful with your language.
What's the difference?
Racism is bigotry based on race.
What's bigotry other than a preference?
Yeah, I don't know if it's racist to like not want to have sex with a certain group of people generally.
Applying laws
between bigotry and a preference.
Race. It's not about your sexual preferences. Your sexual preferences are not racism.
Obviously,
your sexual preference can be based on
could be.
The person who's that bigotry and preference is the same. Explain to me how that makes any sense.
Yeah, if I don't prefer to like live next to a black person, that's racism, but it's also a preference.
If you don't,
in what way is a big? In what?
Right,
give me an example where bigotry would not be a preference.
Okay. Even
I could give you an example where preferences is not bigotry. So therefore they're both not one and the same. If I prefer to marry an Italian woman because I'm Italian and I share that culture and heritage, does that make me racist against every other race?
I mean, yeah, you have a preference against certain races. I would think so. Yeah. Actually.
So you would consider that racism. So then I would say that the definition of racism is way too broad. In order to
but if you're excluding certain people, certain women because they're not Italian, right? How is that not
because they're
like
black,
a form of racism?
or maybe because they're from Asian descent, right?
Yeah, but so they don't deserve your body, right? They don't have a dessert for your body.
If I prefer blondes, does that mean I'm prejudiced against brunettes?
By definition, yes.
And you should be. They're terrible people. But no, like
this is faulty logic.
Definition. Okay.
But so
I would argue at least.
Kasimir, so kind of like using your example of like this convergence, okay, and that it's the way I understand what you're saying, and I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like it's through convergence that we discover, let's say, moral truths. Is that sort of a good way to put it?
I don't know if we can discover, but I do think that we can approach.
Okay, yeah, okay, sure. As in, like,
evidence for doesn't necessarily mean that we discover.
Can you like have you discovered the source of gravity yet?
Not that I'm aware of, but like I'm definitely not an expert in gravity.
We approach really closely. We understand.
Yeah, you'll never get 100%, but you get the asymptote of like just 99 point, like you just very slow, but you never get there. So then again, maybe I'm just not understanding what you're saying correctly, but like so. If you want to, approach that, and you use the example of like, more or less like how things get universalized over time, wouldn't you want to like maximize the chances that, you're able to discover things that get universalizable over time? As in like you should allow people to engage in the behaviors, then you discover like, oh, if everyone enjoys and everyone engages in dog sex, then that's a truth. That becomes like part of the reality.
If it's popular
enough. I maximize this by being specifically ANCAP, whereas you don't. Because this is another core disagreement is that when you say that something immoral, you believe that it gives you the right to like come and slaughter the tribe that does it in a different way. Whereas for us, it would require the only a violation of body autonomy would be casus belli for war. If we decide to represent the other side, to volunteer and represent them if they ask us for help. But in all other cases, yes, I would want you to conduct your experiment. I just don't want you to enslave me to conduct your experiment. If you want to engage in activity where your entire society, does sexual activities with animals, right? Engages in bestiality, and your entire society engages in anal intercourse daily, you do that, but let's disengage. Let your experiment run separate from mine so as to not pollute my experiment. Because I want to maintain that tradition that existed, because I believe that tradition should not be knocked down without overwhelming evidence. So let's create a covenant for you dog fuckers and keep you there, please.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yep.
We've been doing this for a long time. And so let's move on to a different topic. This was not the plan. Here we are. This is not the plan. once again.
You had told me we were talking about this, I would have fucking been like, I'm good for today.
Yeah.
And I just put out really quickly. So we went through all that, and still not a single convincing piece of evidence for moral truth.
Not even a little bit. But
just because you say so doesn't mean it's so. You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.